over 30 years, Point of Grace has shared music, faith, and friendship with listeners across the country. Now Denise, Lee, and Shelley are inviting you into their circle. Welcome to Circle of Friends, the podcast.
It's Point of Grace.
Each week they're talking real life, current events, stories of true friendship, wisdom from God's Word, and all their favorite things. If you're looking for a little company, a few laughs, and a lot of Jesus to hold it together, Circle of Friends, the podcast is waiting for you. Subscribe now wherever you listen or watch podcasts, and circle up with Point of Grace.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation, as usual, as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about. You're meant to change. We will.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm thrilled you can be with us today. We're going to have a wonderful conversation with Rachael Savage. And she's over in the UK, and she is really doing some cool things with the Vamoose Theater and art, using mass to change the culture of dementia. So let's hop right to it. Let me introduce you. Well, Rachael, I am so anxious to have this conversation. We were introduced by a common friend, Nancy Chakran here in the U.S., and she's like, Laura, you've got to meet this woman and what she's doing. And I hear that from a lot of people, but I am so thankful that Nancy reached out. And I know it took us a while between our schedules to get together, but hang tight, guys, because this is going to be a really cool, uplifting, and very different approach to care. So, Rachael, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, if you don't mind.
No, not at all. Thank you. And it is so exciting to be here. And thank you, Nancy. So I'm Rachael Savage, Artistic Director of Vamoose Theatre Company. And we are a theatre company that tours all over the world, and we do that because our specialism is full mask theatre, and full mask theatre is non-verbal. In fact, I have a full mask here in order to just show you exactly what a full mask character mask looks like. So they don't speak, which means that our specialism is non-verbal communication, which of course also means that there's not a language barrier. And so I make shows and write shows about themes that are close to my heart, from forced adoption in the 1960s, post-traumatic stress in the military, end of life, empowering people to make decisions at the end of their lives. And then the most important life-changing show for me was the one I wrote in 2013 about living well with dementia.
Wonderful. And I'm a huge believer in sensory care and our multi-sensory communication that is so overlooked, especially I think when disease hits. We just want that quick, fast answer, like just tell me. It's like, you can't anymore. And I don't care if it's dementia or a stroke or, whatever. I mean, we don't treat people like that, when they're little and they can't communicate. We come into their world and we play and we look for other signs. And for some reason, we've lost that ability. And I think it's gotten, in my perception, it's gotten even worse with texting. People don't know how to read things with just words, and they don't even like talking on the phone, let alone in person. It's just a very strange world I'm 66, from when I grew up. We were taking all of that in, and I just think so many people don't know how to do that anymore.
And of course, we had the pandemic, which pushed people and worlds and loved ones even further apart, and covered up faces and took away face-to-face so much, so that I think has had a huge impact as well.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I always like to ask everybody if they have been touched personally in their own family or circle of friends by dementia.
Wow, start with the hardest question. Yes. My nanny lived, which is grandmother. Does nanny translate?
Yep, we get that one.
My nanny lived to nearly 98. She was never diagnosed as living with dementia, and indeed was she living with dementia. But she, in the final 2 years, 18 months of her life, all those recognisable signs that we all know. At the moment, tricky. I'm having conversations with my dad, who at the moment is out in Vietnam. And I phone up and I say, "How you doing, Dad? Where are you?" And he says, "I'm good. I'm in London." And I say, "I'm not sure you are. I think you're in Vietnam, Dad." And he says, No, I'm definitely in London." And I say, "What about just checking? Let's double check that." And he said, "Yep, we're in London." And I said, "How did you double check that?" And he said, "I looked out my window." So we are going down as families, as siblings, we are going down the path of going, with me especially, saying to my siblings, "I know what's happening here, but he's on the other side of the world. So how do we get him back?" Luckily, we've got him on our phone, so we can track him and we know where he is. And believe me, he moves around a lot. So, yep.
Yeah, you're in the thick of things.
I'm in the thick, yeah.
Yeah, I know my mom lived for 30 years with the disease, and then I, kind of stepped into the advocacy and trying to pull people together, services, products, and tools. And now, actually, I have a family member now I'm caring for, another one, and I'm back into it, and it's changed, and yet it hasn't changed in terms of how we serve. And in some ways, it's gotten worse than what it was, and it just breaks my heart. But let's dive into what you do and how you became interested in the arts in health. Did you have a background in arts? And no,
I fell into it.
Wow, what a nice puddle to fall into.
Oh, it was a great puddle. It was great. So, as I said earlier, I was producing theatre. I was touring theatre. I was working in a venue with a show called Nursing Lives. So I am health obsessed and health interested, and the National Health Service passionate. So I was touring a show at that time called Nursing Lives, and that was a show about the birth of the NHS in this country. And after the show, the chief exec came to me and said, "I'd like to make a co-production with you." And I immediately thought, what an incredible honour, what kudos, what a huge paycheck this is going to come with. And which it didn't, because of course we work in the arts. And then he said, "The theme is dementia." And that's when I kind of took a breath, because I was caring, my nanny at that time was 96, 97. So it was emotionally very close. And bearing in mind, Laurie, this was about 2010. So we're going back over 15 years. And so when I started doing the research of newspaper articles, interviews, novels, films, every bit of research that I did about dementia was negative. It was all about end of life. And it's not that I want to celebrate dementia, but what I wanted to do was I wanted to tell a story that celebrated a life and also found any which way in order to find that person and find joy with that person, and to not focus on the losing, but focus on the finding. And luckily, my mum, when I was pulling my hair out and thinking I'd made a mistake, my mum said, "Why don't you get in touch with old family friend Penny Greenland, who is artistic director of an incredible company in the UK called Jabadeo, which is spelt how it sounds." And Penny is a movement play specialist. And she'd been caring for her mum, Audrey, for the last 7 years, who'd been living incredibly happily. with dementia. So I got on the train and I went and moved in with this family, and I was lucky enough to spend days, weeks with Penny, with Audrey, and with their son Rowan. And through all the conversations, which I could talk about with you for hours, the show was born, and it was called Finding Joy. Joy is the name of the grandmother, and it's about the relationship of Joy and her grandson, which is all based on a true life story. And it's a love story. And it's a love story between a 17-year-old boy who woke up one morning and said, I want to become Grand's carer. And because he had inspirational parents who had lived and worked in care homes, in all different kinds of settings, which is about community and engagement, he was born into it and born an absolute natural. And he was a natural because he was playful, anarchic. His gran, she might not have known who she was or where she was, but what she did know is as soon as that boy walked in the room, her life lit up. And so it's a love story between these two, and a true story about how Rowan learnt everything from his grandmother. And that show has toured all over the world because, of course, dementia is international, and our masks don't speak, so there's no language barrier. So we've toured everywhere from China to Norway, across the UK, Europe.
Wow.
And it's the story it's the show that changed my life and changed everything that I've since done.
Oh, I can believe that. My daughter only knew her grandma with dementia, and they were like just two peas in a pod. You know, it was, and they just they had this connection, because there was just this acceptance.
Absolutely,
yeah. So it's amazing what kids can teach us and really show us how to care and look at things in a different way.
Completely and utterly. And we're actually touring this show again in 2027, and we are going to put in as many intergenerational projects as we can for that exact reason that you've just spoken about.
Oh, cool. That's really neat. Now, I want we're going to look at a clip, a trailer that you've put together. You want to just set this up for us?
Oh, wow. This is going to be the Culture Change trailer, which shows all of the work since having that first conversation in 2010, and then all of the research, all of the journey that I've been on that I'm going to talk more about, but then also about how I want to be using all of those different experiences that I've gathered in creating and pushing out a culture change in dementia care globally.
Well, let's take a peek and then we'll be right back. Well, that was just so impressive, everything that you've shown us there in that clip, and it just highlights bits and pieces. So I want to dive a little bit deeper with you, Rachael, and have you tell us about your training and why it's so important for people to really experience the journey instead of just yapped at, which so often we see is a training mode.
Need a daily spark of hope and direction? Let the Daily Bible app from Salem Media be that spark. This free Android app delivers an uplifting verse each morning, plus reading plans, devotions, and trusted podcasts from leaders like Joyce Meyer and Rick Warren. Prefer to listen instead? The Daily Bible app reads verses, reading plans, and chapters aloud, handy for the headphones moment of your day. Choose from versions like ESV, NIV, KJV, and more, and bookmark favorites to revisit later. Share inspiring messages with loved ones right from the app. Feel God's presence in every notification. Search for Daily Bible app on Google Play and begin your day with hope, purpose, and peace.
So on the opening night of Finding Joy, the Alzheimer's Society came. I'm sure you'll have probably something similar over the pond to the Alzheimer's Society. And they came and first of all, they said, "Congratulations, Rachel, this is training." I said, "It's not training, it's a piece of theatre." And they said, "No, it's definitely training." And we kind of battled a little bit. And then a UK dementia specialist wrote us a quote that said, "This performance, this show is worth more than a dozen textbooks for anybody that's caring for somebody living with dementia." So at that point, I went, "Okay, call it training." And then the Alzheimer's Society said, "Good, I'm glad you've accepted that. And now can you bottle Finding Joy into a training course?" And so that's when I went away and took all of my learning from Penny, from Rowan, I then by that stage had got out onto the front line and was touring to care homes as well. And I made a training package that looks at the way in which we communicate. So going back to my specialism is non-verbal communication. So I wanted to look at the way in which we use our eyes, in which we use our faces, our smiles, our facial expressions, our body language, from our posture, our pace, our proximity, the way in which we touch, hold. And so each of those elements is what my training goes through. And I believe the best way to learn is through experiential learning and also through laughter. And so it starts with laughter, because people are in the room are terrified because they're thinking, "Oh my goodness, she's a theatre director. What's she going to get me to do?" And then I tell them a story of Finding Joy. And then I get people up on their feet saying, "I will look after you." And by the end of 2 hours, I've had a whole roller coaster of emotions, from laughter, from thoughtfulness, from exercises that make people feel anxious and lost and worried and confused. And then when they're saying, and I'm saying, "How is this making you feel?" And they're saying all these things, I say, "Yeah, welcome to the world of dementia." And that's when you can see the penny drop and they go, "Of course." And so to learn not only to be able to empathise how it feels to be living with dementia, but also to find ways in which we can communicate with people in late stage dementia when words no longer make any sense, then it's empowering carers to find all those other skills which they've got, but they have to be given permission to use. And only last week I was reading evaluation that said, from one person on the course, that said, "This is so refreshing to be learning like this, up on our feet, rather than sat down with a PowerPoint or a load of that."
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I've always said we're not going to make true change if we don't shift people to a heart set of care. If we can't get them to feel the emotions, it's not going to happen. And I always use the examples of, here in the US, it's like buckle up. No one was going to buckle up until their kids and their grandkids started tugging at them, going, "You have to put your seatbelt on, or you have to stop smoking." Those were the connections that made people change. It wasn't, "This is the law now and you might get a ticket." It wasn't that. It wasn't coming from this authoritarian, structure. It was, why should I?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think what you do, shows the why in a way that makes them feel the need to change. I'm sure you've experienced this. I've experienced this in some of my trainings where people will just break down in tears going, oh my gosh, I've been doing this wrong. I had one person who said, I've been an executive director of a care home for 21 years. And I really thought the advice I was giving people was good and solid and person-centered. And then my dad got diagnosed and none of it worked.
Yeah.
None of it worked like this. And he had this great guilt and I just think that's where we get people, when we can get them to feel and acknowledge, because, we all, I think, no one's out there trying to do the wrong thing,
No.
People are doing what they've taught. But like you said, when you entered, and I entered this field about the same time, there was nothing out there. Everything was negative. That is what we were taught: doom and gloom and give me your money. It wasn't about connections. It wasn't about living life. It wasn't about how to adapt. It wasn't how to enrich your relationships. And to this day, that is what people are looking for. And it's still way more scarce than it should be.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. It's really interesting, that thing that you say about we need to get people, we change opinion by getting people to feel. So with my productions as a starting point, and then all of the training comes on the back of that, because there's no language, the audience have to be drawn in to interpret. And in interpreting, you've got a really close connection to the heart. So they're having to really use their brain, fast track down to the heart, which frankly I do that as much as possible with, in order to send the message back to the brain to change things. So I always say, if I can get people to feel, I can get them to think. And if I can get them to think, I can change opinion. So many times through the shows, I get emails from people that say, this has changed the way I care for my mum. From social workers or nurses or doctors saying, this has changed the way that I care for my patients.
And I think coming from that art standpoint too, it kind of takes them back because they really don't know what to expect. I did and this is kind of in reverse, but I did a screening of a film, and I told them I needed a room that darkened, and they put me in this big atrium with these big windows up top, and we've got the film going, and only a few people in the audience can actually see the film. And I, went to the director and executive director, and I said, I can switch. I can get up and talk. And he's like, look at them. They are so intent on listening, but they were using the listening skills at a different level, just like with the nonverbals. These things rise up because the story draws them in. And makes them feel. So I think that, we forget about that, and we shut things down a lot of times because it's not what we always have had done or what we've used in order to train. And just reading the audience and getting that feedback. And it must be exciting to not only hear the feedback, but just to watch the audience just embrace this. I mean, because there is this excitement in this. Like, I had to jump off of one of your trainings and I was like dying. I don't want to go. I mean, I really wanted to be there, but I had to leave because I had another appointment. And then I was able to see the rest of it afterwards. But it was like, that's very rare to be at a training where you don't want to miss a second. It's that valuable. So that is what Rachael is delivering here. Now, how did you connect with care homes and things? I know that can be really difficult, and especially like back in the pandemic days as well as today. And how was that received?
During the pandemic, I can tell you very clearly about how we connected during the pandemic with care homes, which is a great story. So we were supposed to be touring throughout care homes throughout the UK when the pandemic hit. And we're really lucky enough to be funded by the Arts Council of Britain, which is like we're regularly funded by the government. And the Arts Council, I had a meeting with them and they just said, do nothing, just stay safe. and I was furious. And I was thinking, this is taxpayers' money, and I'm supposed to be in care homes, and I'm supposed to be working with people in late-stage dementia, and who's supporting the care providers at the moment? So I got on the phone to an old friend who's, have you heard of Cirque du Soleil? Cirque du Soleil, they tour all over the world. He's the head clown of Cirque du Soleil. So I got on the phone to him and said, Sean, are you busy at the moment? And he said, Rachel, of course I'm not. Everywhere in the world is closed. And I said, yeah, I thought that. I said, how do you fancy making a show that can tour outdoor, outside, double glazed windows of care homes in the middle of winter? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. I'd love to do that more than anything. Just get me out, get me working. And also he toured care homes with me before, so he immediately knew the value of it. So he and I and my little white fluffy dog, Nora, a real dog, made a show called Love Through Double Glazing. And we toured that in the thick of winter and and perform this show just on the other side of that glass where we could hold, we could touch. And it was a life-changing experience, actually, because I don't think we've ever released so much emotion and laughter and tenderness and naughtiness and sexiness and as before. And I think not only the reaction of the residents was immense, but of the care staff as well, and of course all of the commitments that they made throughout the pandemic. It was wild. It was a wild experience. It was crazy, you know, because we would turn up and they'd say, have you got your tests, your COVID tests? Can I take your temperature? Can you sign here? And we'd be doing all of this at a distance with masks. And then I'd get Nora out the van and they'd go, oh, yeah, I love your dog. Can I have it? And they'd just take the dog and say, I'm just going to take her into the care home. And she'd run into the care home. Everybody would be grabbing her and kissing her and holding her. And then they'd hand her back at the end. And I'd be going, COVID!
Oh my gosh. That's just so fun. I remember stories of all, like we had a lot of musicians doing stuff outside. And I had one friend, I mean, because the isolation was so huge, the stress level, you can go on and on of all the negative things, the depression. One of my best friend's brother went to visit his mom, and of course he couldn't go in. So he snuck in with a ladder and climbed up to the second floor to see his mom.
Amazing.
You know, and I'm thinking, why did none of them like take out a boom, you know, a little cherry picker and raise people up to be able to see their families? You know, and get creative like you did.
You know what? There was one part of the show where because in the UK, often the people living in later stage dementia are kept on floors that are higher up. Mm-hmm. And so we had one part of the show where we start a food fight, of course. And so because Sean is this incredible clown, he was able to get the cake, put it onto a platform on a broom and send it up to the top floor, hand them the cake, and also do the same thing with water pistols. So we had a food fight from the top floor, and we're giving residents water pistols to improve their hand-eye coordination. That's what we say. That's what we say to anybody that says, "What's the learning point for that?" Because fun isn't enough.
Well, it's engagement. It's feeling purposeful. It's part of community, which was totally lost during that
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
Oh
I had a quote here that I found today that Walter, who is 84, said, "I can't believe it. I feel alive again." And it was, it was taking noise and laughter and naughtiness.
Yep. Oh my gosh. How fun. You must have a line of people that want to work with you because it's not your everyday job by any stretch.
It's not. What was interesting that you said about isolation was at the beginning of the pandemic, I started walking, as we all did, and I used to walk past a care home where I met the same lady who was a stranger, And I met her every day, and I used to go and take my dog and used to wave and show her the dog. And then one day her daughter was there, and I said, I've made friends. Is this your mum? I've made friends with her. And she was touched, and she gave me her telephone number. So then we started making phone calls. Off the back of that, I was then commissioned by the BBC, a Culture in Quarantine commission, where I wrote 20 episodes about how a family stayed connected with their loved ones in care homes. And it was all based on my friend Hazel that I'd met. And the whole thing was called How Hard is Waving? And it was about how hard is it just to go past and stay connected with the outside world. And then on the back of that, I led a national campaign called the Wednesday Wave, which encouraged schools, families, strangers, neighbourhoods to go out at 3:30 on a Wednesday afternoon, where the care home residents would be waiting for their communities to be waving, blowing kisses, writing messages. But it's the face-to-face, isn't it?
Looking for a simple way to stay rooted in God's Word every day? The Daily Bible Devotion app by Salem Media gives you morning and evening devotionals designed to encourage, inspire, and keep you connected with Scripture. Plus, you'll enjoy daily Bible trivia and humor, a fun way to learn and share a smile while growing in your faith. Get the Daily Bible Devotion app for free on both iOS and Android. Start and end your day with God's Word. Search for the Daily Bible Devotion app in the App Store or Google Play Store and download it today.
Yeah.
That's what we miss. So,
oh, beautiful, beautiful. Well, if you're just tuning in right now, we're talking with Rachael Savage, who's the artistic director of the Vamos Theater. And this is just such a fun, exhilarating conversation. And, you know, if you're just popping in midway, make sure you rewind to hear it all. She's absolutely fabulous. We'll have all the contact information for you in the show notes and things. But I also want to give a shout out to my webmaster, Q for Good, who is absolutely fabulous. And they love working with businesses that are service oriented and giving back to the community, which I think is really rare. Plus, they are exceptional. So if you're looking for someone to work with on your websites, if you don't like the black hole and the coding and all the stuff that goes with it, check them out. And if you mention my name or Alzheimer's Speaks, you can get a 10% discount too. But let's get back to Rachael. I just have so many questions, and I know we've got limited time, but I want to talk about, you know, your culture care, dementia care, and we've touched a lot on that, but I know the work that you've put into this, I go so much deeper. So is there more that you would like to share?
We tailor make stuff, our culture change ambition. And this began about 3 years ago when I've been working really closely with a provider in the UK called Prime Life. And they've got 62 care homes across the UK. And what they wanted was a culture change within their care home, especially since the pandemic. And what that really meant for them, and I worked closely with their workforce development director, was empowering carers to think differently and to communicate differently and work differently and think about how they are communicating non-verbally, how they're using their eyes and their facial expressions and their tone of voice and their pace, but also how can they use playfulness in everything that they do? And so to start with Prime Life, I led the training with the staff. I then led modelling performances with their residents and their staff. I brought in a box that I call Joiner Box. And Joiner Box is something that I leave in the care home as a resource, and it's got about 21 activities. It's got about 10 different playlists that I've spent months making. And they can be playlists to help put somebody back to bed. They can be playlists that can help people get out of bed. All different playlists with all different functions. And then also props in the box, from giant balloons, and I'm talking giant, to parachutes, to ribbons, to props in which we use for play and engagement non-verbally. And the non-verbal is the key, and that all of the training is about how do we shut up and listen with our eyes and match somebody's energy and mirror somebody's energy in order to say, I'm with you and I'm listening and you're right. And also, I love you. And I think that's the main point of the training. It's about how do you shower somebody with love. And so this for me was is the journey that the Culture Change Project has been on. And already we are working with people all over the world. We're starting fascinating conversations in the US. Twice I've been to NOAA, which is your National Arts in Health organisation, to their conference, where I've been asked to lead training, a masterclass on both occasions. And we have met the most brilliant partners who are fascinated and who believe in culture change that's needed and believe that they want to go on a culture change journey of their own. I think also I'd like to just tell you that whenever I do stuff like this, when I work in a care home, I talk to the residents because I believe completely in nothing about us without us. And I ask two questions that I find fascinating. The first one is, what makes you happy? And in care homes recently, if I can just read you 4 or 5 of those, residents have told me, I love dancing. Another lady said, I want to be loved. I want people to tell me that they love me. And I found that so moving. And now I say to people, how difficult and how much more of your day does it take when you're putting Josephine to bed to say, good night, Josephine, sleep tight. I love you. She might sleep better, as well as feel loved. Other people said, I want to get up and do things rather than sitting down all the time. Another gentleman said, I want them to tell me what the medicine's for. It could be poisonous. And then another question that I always ask, there's 2 questions. The other one is, what do you think about the people who care for you? And I get some really positive replies. A gorgeous one is, I love the staff that laugh, because that makes me laugh. Another one, interestingly, is the staff talk over me like I'm not here. They don't talk to me. Another lady said, I wish they'd talk to me as friends. And then this last one, which is so easy to change, is strangers come in my room and they don't tell me their names. So all of these things, I always take messages from care home residents who I talk to. So when I've got the desires, the wishes right from the horse's mouth, that I think then it's also more impactful to be able to use those to back up my training and back up the culture change, and also to say, how hard is this to change? It's not. So that's the culture change ambition that I am on. And boy, am I ambitious about it.
Well, I love it. I think it's just brilliant. And I think, anyways, in the US, I think we have been taught that culture change has to be so difficult. And it's not once you reach the heart. It's the eye contact. Yeah. It's the smile. It's not being diverted by your iPad or your phone or your file as you're walking down the hall. No. It really, and then there's this ripple effect. And I think management and staff are shocked by it because it isn't that difficult, and it doesn't have to be that costly, and it's fun, and it helps with staff retention. Yes. Everybody's happier. You're building the teams again because they're sharing about good things, which, you know, we've been trained to just share the bad things. Yeah. So-and-so got aggressive. Make sure you note that in the file. Don't forget to report that. And we're not talking about the moments of joy.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to comment with what you said, listen with your eyes. And I guess to me, as you were describing it, I would say listen with your body, because people not only see things differently, but they feel the room change, that connectiveness of energy. They hear sounds differently, they even taste things differently when your moods change and stuff. I mean, it's just this huge ripple effect of touch and everything. And I just think we all have to slow down and get in tune with our own bodies as a whole, and respect also what we're feeling, because we've been taught to cover everything up, and you're like, just get it out there. Just, all these emotions are there, and they're justified. You don't have to, hang in the pot forever with that one emotion. Let's know that you can't have a high without a low, and that's normal living. And I've found such resistance to acknowledging that, or even when something, happens that maybe a community doesn't like, they're like, oh, we can't share that. And I'm like, or having families and staff and people with dementia all in a training to go, oh, what if somebody says something wrong? If you have a good facilitator, it's a great learning lesson, because whatever was said was not just thought by that one person. Let's
absolutely.
just get it on the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And thank them for being honest and authentic.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we have enough of that either. And
you have to be brave to be authentic, don't you?
Exactly. And I'm starting to see that shift a little bit, but boy, we need a much bigger curve on that one going.
You know what? I was really surprised when I came to the States and delivered the masterclass, because I was thinking, so we watch American films in the UK, and your actors they're more emotional, they're more natural, they're not kind of as rigid as we are in the UK. And I was thinking, what have I got to teach? This work that I do about using our eyes and our faces and our bodies and reading our bodies and taking responsibility for them, you're going to be already all over it in the US. And I could not believe the reaction to it, in terms of, you've used the word already, how authentic it was, and how needed it is in the US. I was so shocked.
Yeah, we're kind of in a box, social appropriateness, and even like on Facebook, everything's fine and dandy, world is peachy, everybody's always smiling. Look how many likes I have, and it's like, okay, let's step into the real world. You don't know 99% of the people that are liking you. They're probably bots anyways. And, we're seeing a lot of those bots starting to say some really nasty things that are really upsetting people, and they don't know how to protect themselves against that, and it's very foreign. But yeah, we love our films, but people for the most part aren't walking an authentic path. They're doing what they've been told to do, especially my generation, and I think that, once you hit 60, that all kind of changes. You're like, excuse my language, screw that, but I'm gonna live my life, and I'm gonna find that peace and that happiness. And I think some of the younger kids are finding that sooner. They're not gonna do this job just because their parents said this would be good, or they're not going to do this. They want to experience more things. And then you have the middle ground, but everybody really communicates very, very differently. And I don't think people realize how much bullying goes on either, and how much more we need those authentic, kind gestures in our lives, and people that make us feel we matter, and that we can tell them they matter to us.
I worked in a care home. I visited a care home in the States recently, and I was shocked by the lack of communication in that care home. That was, for me, because of the way that I work and I teach. It was abusive. And that for me is because there's no communication there. There's dragging of chairs back. There was so much fear in that room, and I've never felt fear like that when I've gone into a care home before. I was incredibly shocked. But we turned it round.
Wow, that's fabulous. I know when I was looking for a family member, I actually cried leaving, going, I can't place somebody there. And here in Minnesota, we used to have excellent care, but there's such a disconnect. And I think a lot of it comes from being so task oriented. And, I literally get angry, and I personally hate the term person-centered care because I think it's overused and underdelivered.
I know people don't know what it means.
And the everyday person doesn't know what it means. So I always talk about relationship-based care. But yeah, there's such a huge need. I want to ask, I'm sure, I mean, you've mentioned a ton of kind of magical moments, but there must be a couple, especially with people in late stages, where they really get thrown to the wolves and just kind of left, because they can't do anything. There's nothing there. And I'm like you, I've had some of my best moments with those people.
Need a daily spark of hope and direction? Let the Daily Bible app from Salem Media be that spark. This free Android app delivers an uplifting verse each morning, plus reading plans, devotions, and trusted podcasts from leaders like Joyce Meyer and Rick Warren. Prefer to listen instead? The Daily Bible app reads verses, reading plans, and chapters aloud, handy for the headphones moment of your day. Choose from versions like ESV, NIV, KJV, and more, and bookmark favorites to revisit later. Share inspiring messages with loved ones right from the app. Feel God's presence in every notification. Search for Daily Bible app on Google Play and begin your day with hope, purpose, and peace.
Can you share a couple of magical moments you've experienced?
Yeah. One is in a care home that I go to a lot, and they keep saying, when can Rachel come back? And so I went back this one day, and they said, right, the training room is booked. You've got the garden room. You're all ready to go. The new members of staff are there waiting for you. And I said, whoa, hang on a minute. How do you know what I'm going to do? And they said, well, because you're going to do training. And I said, is Josephine out of bed? And they said, no, she's not. And I said, when did she last get out of bed? And they said 2.5 months ago. And I said, that's when I was here. And they said, oh, yeah, no, she's not been out since then. And I said, okay, training starts in Josephine's room. Off we go. And so I get into Josephine's room, and I'm basically modelling and using all of the things that I do, where I get down on the same level. This is a woman that spends her entire time in bed. I get down onto a level. It's not rocket science. I use my eyes. I smile. I go straight in for a cuddle and a kiss. And I tell her how thrilled I am to see her and how gorgeous it is to see her. And then I just shut up and listen. And then she talks to me. And then after a while, with a continued physical connection, I say, shall we get out of bed, Josephine? Shall we get you out today? Shall we have some fun today? And because I'm looking and I'm nodding and I'm smiling, this comes back at me. And she says yes. And all the members of staff around me are thinking, she won't get out. And of course, and I say, okay, I'm going to get you out and I'm going to dance you out, and we're going to use your wedding dance, aren't we? And you and we're going to stay connected and we're going to dance you out of bed. And so, of course, out comes Elvis Presley. Again, he never fails us, and particularly at the moment. And but then the hoist comes out. Do you call it a hoist?
Yeah.
I call it a human crane. They're horrendous things. Anyway. And it comes out, and that's when she starts to go, no, I don't want to. And I go, you're with me. You're with me, Josie. And we're looking at each other's, and we're going to hold, and we're going to dance, and I'm going to keep you safe. And eventually, not even eventually, we get her out of bed, and she gets out of bed and we get her dressed, and she comes in. And the most brilliant thing was her daughter phoned, as she always did, and said, can I speak to Josie? And Mum, and they said, no, it's ideal if you don't speak to her just now, because she's in an activity. And her daughter goes, don't interrupt her if she's out of bed. So that's my joyful thing, is always going in and getting Josephine out of bed. And then my last one is in a care home in England, in a part of the world called Skegness, which is as horrible as it sounds. Skegness is a seaside town where my grandparents went on their honeymoon. And I keep going back there because you mentioned earlier on the manager. And the manager of a care home is the person who can change everything, and it has to change from the top. And Kelly, this particular manager, has believed right in my culture change right from the word go. And she makes all of the staff compulsory go, from the cleaners to the chefs to the carers to the activity coordinator to her. And everybody goes through that training. And I came back on a repeat session with them. And I'd led this training with a new group. And then at the end of the group, I said, okay, we've got some time left now. So we're going to go back into the lounge, and you are going to choose somebody to sit and listen with. And I said, and don't choose the easy person. Go for the person that you know isn't speaking and hasn't spoken. So we go through, and I go through too, and I meet Stephen. And Stephen has got early onset dementia. He's too young, and he's frustrated, and he's cross about it. And he's a big bloke with tattoos and an England T-shirt, and he's cross because he's frustrated. So Stephen was sat in the same position as when I arrived that day, which was disengaged. And so I introduced myself to Stephen and say how pleased I am to meet him. And I sit beside him, and I watch and I listen and I nod. And Stephen is trying to tell me something really, really important. And in doing all of that, his body is speaking. The words that he is saying don't make sense to me, but they're words and they're coming out. But he continues to talk because I start mirroring him. So I'm watching him, I'm nodding, I'm mirroring exactly what he's doing, which is saying to him, I'm listening to you and you're right. But still the words make no sense. Even after 30 minutes, we keep going for 30 minutes, and then I have to go. And then the next day I come back to the same care home, and they've double booked, by mistake, they've double booked a karaoke singer. And she's going, I don't know how we're going to do this. And I say, I do. You do your stuff and I'll do my stuff. So she started singing, and I go to Stephen and I say, would you like to dance? And Stephen and I dance all afternoon, and I mirror and I match all of his moves, and his moves are extraordinary. And I learned some new ones that day, and whatever he does, I do. And again, my body is saying to Stephen's body, you're right. Whatever you're doing is absolutely right, and I'm getting on those tracks with you. And we danced for over an hour, and at the end of the day, it was time to go. And I said goodbye to him and how much I'd loved spending the afternoon with him. He started speaking in sentences that made complete and utter sense.
Wow.
And that's because I always say our bodies are like rivers and they need to move. We must not, if we are stayed still, held still all the time, we're like a dam that doesn't move. And we unlock our bodies and we can unlock our minds and we can find the connection. So that was my most moment. That was the tears down the face moment.
And everything you're saying is simple to do. It's just paying attention and acknowledging, people. And it's fun.
Yeah. And I say it's not rocket science, it's human science.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take, as you say, any more time.
Yeah. Well, and it saves time because people
Yes.
are engaged and you don't have the outbursts and, things go faster the next time because you get their body to anticipate your coming and how you're going to present and interact with them.
Yeah.
And so, and then again, that has a ripple effect versus someone having an outburst or, having a reaction. I hate calling it a behavior because it's just a reaction to their setting and they're trying to communicate with us.
Yeah.
I was just going to say one last thing. I want to know just real quickly, because I got to wrap up here.
Yeah.
What's next for you? What do you see and how can people join your journey?
For me, it's about how do I connect and share this information with as many people as possible internationally. And so commissioned by Prime Life again, they've asked me to write a whole series of online training. And this will be called The Art of Care. And it will be ready about April, May, June time of 2026. And it is all those things that already we've been talking about good practice, about nonverbal communication, poor nonverbal, accepting realities, deep listening and touch, tone of voice. There's one on behaviour. This word behaviour. There's one on meal times and mistakes. And then there's one called permission to play. And the whole programme will take carers from home carers for loved ones, and professional carers through a whole process of really breaking it down in order to empower them to be able to use all of this kind of methodology. And I think the exciting thing for me is it's got all of the films that I've ever made in. It's got me working live in care homes with residents. It's also got mask actors on stage with actors so that you can also show how to get it wrong. But you've got to be able to do that with things like this, with mask characters, as opposed to residents, which of course you wouldn't want to do. And it's ambitious, but it's also creative and fun. So it should feel like learning through loving and laughing, as opposed to, I've got to sit through an online demonstration of something. So that's what I'm working out, as well as still working with, I sit on the Prime Minister's Focus Group in the UK to try and make change at government, as well as keeping to deliver this joy in a box far and wide. So it's, lots to do.
Lots of big stuff. Very exciting. I can't thank you enough for sharing with us what you're doing. I love the approach. I think it's so interesting, too, because people think that they can't laugh and learn, or they can't laugh and care. We've been told that that's disrespectful. And it's like, no, laughter's like the glue that holds us together, I think. Yeah. And it's one of the most precious things, and it immediately touches our heart. It doesn't go here. It goes to the heart.
It's what I start every training with, because when we laugh, we breathe differently. Our bodies open up. You gain trust, and you're able to build that relationship. Laughter, it's so important.
I very, very much agree with you. Now, people can go to your website, which is the Vamoose Theater, and they spell it theatre.co.uk. We'll have the phone number. They're on Facebook and Instagram. And you can also get more information from them. Are you doing like consultations over the phone, or if people want to, hire you to?
You know what? Just go on the website, contact us, and send us a message. Everybody's request is so different, and we just love to talk to people who want to make change, and we will find it any which way to do it.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you for spending so much time with us today. Keep up the brilliant work. I will be spreading it as far as wide as I can do here. And then also, in wrapping up, I always like to ask our audience to be a giver of hope. And man, what hope does Rachael and in her theater give people? I mean, it's a whole new twist, though it's very natural, on how to care. And you'll have fun in the process. So you never know who is in your sphere of influence that needs this information. So just like, click, and share. It costs you no money. It takes little time, but it has a huge impact. And there are always new people needing this information. So thank you all for being part of our community. Again, Rachael, thank you for your time today. Bye.
What a privilege to spend an hour with you. Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Need a daily spark of hope and direction? Let the Daily Bible app from Salem Media be that spark. This free Android app delivers an uplifting verse each morning, plus reading plans, devotions, and trusted podcasts from leaders like Joyce Meyer and Rick Warren. Prefer to listen instead? The Daily Bible app reads verses, reading plans, and chapters aloud, handy for the headphones moment of your day. Choose from versions like ESV, NIV, KJV, and more, and bookmark favorites to revisit later. Share inspiring messages with loved ones right from the app. Feel God's presence in every notification. Search for Daily Bible app on Google Play and begin your day with hope, purpose, and peace.